All right, we're live. All right. Hey, my name is Frank, the best looking beard in Youth Men. And we got here, ouch, what was that? We got here Ben and Keith, and we are excited to start off the new year with a roundtable. And what we're going to do, hopefully, Lord willing, is every Monday around 3:20, a group of youth pastors will get together right here live to discuss youth ministry issues, youth ministry things, as well as just have an overall good time just hanging out with each other. So we are excited. New year, new goals, same youth ministry, and we're excited to do this.
Yeah, yeah, and we got some exciting new things. I think they should be showcased. We got a January bundle that we're going to be doing every month of just something that ideally is going to be perfect for part-time youth pastors, volunteer youth pastors to just $20 get it and have a month's worth of youth ministry resources. So we got that up for January, and also a new site that it's not really a youthmin.org thing. It's more a church-wide thing. There's no one person really responsible for it, but nomoreclipart.com is going to be a site that takes the best qualities of Unsplash, the free, royalty-free stock photos that anybody can use for anything that you want to do, and mixes that with another site we love called lightstock.com that is all Christian stock photography. It kind of was birthed out of the idea that churches break the law every week in the stuff we put in our bulletins, the stuff we post on Instagram. Just there's no respect for copyright, intellectual property. And so we really want to make this a website that gives churches no excuse to break the law, no excuse for bad design, but really no excuse to steal other people's intellectual property and all that. So that's going on every 10 days. There's 10 new photos, so I think Wednesday is the next day. Check that out, nomoreclipart.com. And Keith, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that I have been guilty of bad design and copyright infringement in my career, so please
Don't say
consider
that.
Yeah, no, I've learned the error of my ways, so I'm glad for sites that offer good stuff like that. So today we're going to talk about this kind of overarching philosophy question, which is how much should the vision of your youth ministry line up with the overall vision of your church? I know sometimes it's kind of I don't know, it's easy to fall into the trap of kind of doing youth ministry in your own silo. And so should those things line up? Should they be the same, or should they kind of be separate? So I'll let you guys kind of jump in on that question, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Why don't we first start? Like, do you guys have mission or vision statements for your youth groups?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so the follow-up question that I thought was implied. What are they?
Ours is part of our. It's just our discipleship strategy, which is connect, worship, grow, serve, and our goal is that as a ministry we exist to connect students to Christ, to teach them what it means to worship God with their lives, to equip them to grow in Christ, and to challenge them to serve others. So we think that helps a student make sense of like what the next step is in their faith. Like, not just meeting Jesus, but then what's next? Oh, I learned to worship Him. Oh, okay, now what do I do with that? Okay, well, I need to grow. I need to not be stagnant. And then once I've begun growing in Christ, how do I live that faith out? It's by serving others. So it's kind of a natural progression, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't trying to be not interested in what you were saying. It's because I always remember when I think about mission or vision statements for youth ministry, like so often you see the exact quote taken out of Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry by Doug Fields that, like, I feel like that's the generic youth group mission statement, and I don't think that was his intention with it. So I was going to compare yours to that, Keith.
Yeah.
I've not read that book all the way through, so
That's like chapter.
That's heresy.
That's like, but that's like that mission statement thing. I was like the first two chapters or something like that. When I got here, that was the first thing I wanted to do because I'd never done that. Like in my last church before I got here, we didn't have a purpose mission statement. We were just kind of like running around, just trying to be like Jesus with no goals. And so when I got here, I was like, one of the first things I want to do is find a mission statement. And what I wanted to do was kind of a little different than a lot of people. I read Doug Fields' book on the plane to here to kind of refresh my memory of what he has to say about youth ministry. I read a couple other youth ministry books, but what I wanted to do was read other churches' mission statements or purpose statements, whatever, about their church of people who I respect, and see how I can translate that into a student ministry purpose statement. And so, as I was looking it up, I just straight up jacked one that I thought was excellent, and it was the Village Church's purpose statement. Matt Chandler's church has. I'm all about gospel-centered stuff, gospel-centeredness, and their mission statement is kind of what I just kind of took on as our youth group's mission statement, which is narrow student ministry exists to bring glory to God by making disciples through gospel-centered worship, gospel-centered community, gospel-centered service, and gospel-centered multiplication. And so whether it's worship, multiplication, community, and service, all that stuff that we do expounds and comes out of a gospel-centered mindset. And I loved it so much that I took copyright infringement and broke the law and took it on as our own.
So I stole from Doug Fields, and you stole
from Matt Chandler, yeah.
Sensing a theme to this roundtable.
So, Ben, who'd you steal from?
Well, what I was going to say is, I don't know if ours is necessarily the classic purpose statement, mission statement, vision statement. I'll get to that in a second. But our whatever statement that we have, same one that I stole from myself, then I guess, because it's the same one that I had at our last youth group in Boston, of just to make Jesus Christ known and see lives change, to change lives. And because it covers it of, we want to see students come to a real relationship with Jesus Christ, because we know that when they do, their life is going to be markedly different. And when their life is markedly different, it's going to change other people's lives. So that's it. We didn't throw in all the, like, we want to worship and equip. And so all of that, like, is mine a mission statement and yours a vision statement? Or, like, what's the difference? How would you guys define the different quirks, I guess, of a mission, vision, purpose statement?
Man, I've always felt like that is such a subjective thing, like the difference between a mission and vision and all that other stuff. I like, one thing I was always kind of like hardcore about was like, man, the worst statement ever is love God and love others. I think that's so dumb and so cheesy. But I found myself I just got back in the retreat, and I was, we were in our series about misfits, and I used the phrase love God and love others because it kind of just exemplifies that if you can love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love others, like that kind of encapsulates any kind of mission statement and purpose statement you have. Now I just don't do it because I want to be a hipster about it and not be like everyone else. But I don't know, man. I think when it comes to mission and vision statement, I think it all depends on how you define that stuff. But like with me, I didn't want to like have 3 different statements for 3 different arbitrary titles or whatever. I just said, I'm going to go with this statement. If you want to call it a mission or a vision or a purpose statement or whatever, I'm fine with anything. Because my thing is just, it encapsulates what we're trying to do, and it kind of gives sort of objective goals of what we're aiming for. And I think ultimately, when you come up with a statement, that's what you're trying to do, coming up with objective goals to reach towards. So that way you're not just a youth minister with their head cut off. You have things you're aiming for, and with goals you can kind of program and do things towards that idea. And so that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say I look at it as a vision statement is like the driving philosophy behind why or what I do, I guess. So it's like, obviously our youth ministry exists to introduce students to Christ and make it a life-changing relationship. And then the mission statement is how we do what we want to do, which is connect, worship, grow, serve. We want to teach students to connect and to worship and to grow and to serve. To me, that's more the nuts and bolts, the pragmatic elements, the steps to take. And so I chose to utilize that because I felt like it was easier for a student to grasp as opposed to the abstract thought, that I wanted it to be very clear, like these are the purposes that drive us, these are the things that we do to accomplish the greater purpose, which is a relationship with Christ that changes lives. So,
yeah.
That's good.
I want to make one correction to what you said, Keith, just so that it rhymes better. Can I fix it? I would say your vision, basically what you described, is why you do what you do, and your mission is how you do what you do. So,
yeah.
It's so
that's just
basic.
more of a tweetable tweet. But,
Yes, thank you.
but yeah. All right, so with all that said, how much do you guys, like, should a mission or vision of a youth ministry line up with the church? and if so, how much?
Well, let me ask this question that might go along with that. What is your church's mission statement, and is it the same as ministries?
Yeah.
Maybe that
I would
reveal
say in past church that I've had, I'd never heard the vision statement, and then it hit me one day. Oh, it's plastered on a banner above it, but no one ever talked about it. So I couldn't tell you that.
We're the only church that's ever done that.
Yeah, but here we talk about it all the time, especially in staff meetings and in pastoral team leader meetings. Our pastor talks about it on Sunday mornings, and it's to educate the believers, engage believers, evangelize, and equip. Those are our 4 things that we really go after. And in all of our ministries, we have one overarching goal for each year with all the ministries, and we break that down inside of the ministries. But we also are just looking at. Totally just lost my thought. But with it, when I'm laying out our yearly calendar for the youth group, as well as our sermons and small groups, I'm looking at, am I educating enough? What events do we do that engage in worship? What are we doing to evangelize? What are we doing to equip? So we are totally lining up our youth ministries, purpose, mission, events to fit right into that mission statement of our church. So that's what's going on with us.
Yeah. Frank, how about you?
Yeah, ours is it's kind of like what you said. Like, it's not that our church promotes it as much as it's just implied. So like ours is touching lives with Scripture, connecting lives with love, and so like if you knew kind of like the dynamic of our church, we are like we're the traditional Southern non-denominational Bible church in the South. You know what I'm saying, like, so even though we're not denominational, every Southern Bible church, has kind of like this like kind of underlining idea of Scripture is the authority, and like that's a big deal. It's exegetical preaching and that kind of stuff. And so, so a lot of the reason why people come to our church is because it's like the preaching. It's the word, coming from the Scriptures. Not that like other churches don't, but like that's like the go-to thing here. And so I came in here wanting to use a youth purpose statement, knowing it was going to be different from the main churches, simply because I think Keith said this earlier. Like, there's a lot of kind of pre-understood notions that adults can understand going into a church that youth might need more specific directions toward. So, like, adults can come to our church and say, okay, our slogan is touching lives with Scripture, connecting lives with love, but know that we're about worship and mission and all that stuff without it being plastered on a sign or something. Where with students, like I want to give them more direction, and that's why I went towards the gospel-centered worship, service, multiplication, and so on. And so in this context, in this situation, like in this question, where normally I would always say the youth ministry needs to always submit to the big church in general, because if we don't, we can create a baby church within the church that can be really unhealthy for our youth group, because when they graduate, they realize adult church is nothing like youth group, and then they're disenchanted and disenfranchised, and they leave. But I think when it comes to your purpose statement, I think it's okay to kind of create your own and have that more specific for this context, so that they're kind of like, when they graduate and move on, they have their bags packed and they're like, okay, I've understood this. So as I go on to the main service or I go on to wherever I go, they understand that as Christians we're supposed to be gospel-centered in our worship and our service and our multiplication and everything. But I can go into another church or go into our main church, even though it's a slightly different slogan or tagline. It's still like the main purposes are there, And so usually I'm always like, hey, don't try to deviate too much from the main church or try to be like a renegade. But in this situation, I think it's okay because it's healthy, I think, to kind of contextualize for students.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us would frown upon a children's minister who took the words educate, evangelize, edify, and changed them to be like teach.
Learn. Yeah.
Learn, that kind of stuff. Like, sometimes in just context, you're recognizing, like, hey, a 6th grade student may not be able to totally comprehend this thought, or this isn't a word that they would ever utilize, or, they'd have to go look it up to even understand what it means.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, is it can be kind of your own twist, but in general, the purpose and the direction is still the same.
I mean, ultimately, like, I think if you're within your church, like here's what I'm saying: if you make a purpose statement that your senior pastor could change it to, you know what I'm saying? Like, your senior pastor would say, "I'm going to change our purpose statement to this now." Like, if your senior pastor could say that, or your elders could say that, then I think you're safe in that realm. Now, if you're like, your purpose statement is like, our only goal is to reach, widows, and we don't do worship, and we don't even like baptize people. We just feed orphans and hang out with widows. Then like there you might be like hurting your youth group because you're not expanding on worship and missions and evangelism and other things. If it's so radically different than what your church would accept, does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so like I think like your purpose statement ultimately will fit under an umbrella that your main church would approve of and would do, but it can be worded differently and maybe even focused on separate things. Like, for example, like a church could say, we want to be a giving church. Well, youth can't give. A lot of them don't have jobs. And even if they did have jobs, it's not enough for them to give like 10% to tithe or whatever to the youth group. And so that's the contextual thing that we don't apply to student ministry that we apply to adult ministry. Does that make sense? And so whatever it is, it's like it can be umbrellaed under the main church's vision and mission, but it can be worded and even kind of geared towards different things towards the students.
Yeah.
Here's a question, though, Frank. Sorry, I don't know if you had something, Keith. To coincide, because something you said in the thread on the Facebook community a few weeks ago, like I was like, man, I love that. It was about the do you preach exegetically and all that stuff, and you were like, if your students are going to hear a different style of sermon in youth group than church, like you're doing them a disservice.
Right.
And I'm totally right there with you. Totally love that. And even what you're saying here, like, your youth ministry needs to be part of the church. That like if it's going to be a separate thing, whatever. You don't want to disenfranchise, do whatever you can there. But with that, why can't we tithe in youth group? Why can't the students tithe? Of like the sort of biblical idea of 10%, and this is a whole other roundtable, so I don't want to get too off topic here, but why can't students tithe? Why couldn't that be part of our mission to see students actively giving? I know today in the Facebook community someone talked about the active water that Keith suggested, or charity water, things like that. Why couldn't that be part of our mission or purpose to get students to start tithing at a young age?
I think that's a great idea, and if you can come up with a philosophy to do it properly, I'm going to steal it and do it in my youth group. I've just seen like in most youth ministry contexts, and like that is I don't want to say disservice, but like that is one area where it's a clear distinction between the adult worship and the youth worship. Is the part of worship through giving. And I wish, I think a lot of times we kind of substitute worship through giving because we just kind of use our students as like child labor to go work in the children's ministry, and that's their giving, that's their tithing because they're serving their time. But then you have an issue of they're never going to the worship service because they're always with the toddlers. But that's a whole other discussion that we have to deal with. But I don't know. I want to see it. I would love to see students be able to give. And at least in my context, what we do is we do semester like not fundraisers, but like service projects where it's like we ask kids to give towards like kind of like the charity water thing. As it's not going to be like every Wednesday night we pass a plate, but once a semester we say, hey, this is the cause we're going to support. Start collecting pennies in jars or whatever, or sell some candy bars. I don't know. There's different things, and we teach the students to give through that. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. If you can come up with a way that you can consistently teach on Wednesday night kids to give as an offering so it can add to your student budget that doesn't involve like trading chocolate and candy, I'm all about that, and I want to be a part of that future of youth ministry. But I think that's why youth ministry budgets are needed, because we don't see students tithe and give. But that's needed to be taught because college students are terrible givers, and we see that probably most people don't give until they're like late 20s, early 30s, and that's a problem. So yeah.
I would say that's twofold though, because then you get like, as I'm thinking about it, like I think our youth group would be able to get behind that, and that's not be like, oh, I'm a great youth pastor. The kids that I inherited here like are on fire and like would totally get on board with something like that. That like if I was ever in a ministry that was a place to do that, it'd be here. And so I'm like, all right, well we get ushers and all that, but then my mind goes into how much is that sort of recreating big church in the youth ministry, and then that's a whole other problem.
Right, 'cause I don't think you want to do that. I don't like for example, one thing I purposely say to my students is we only do communion, and this might be totally off topic, but I'll say this quickly. We only do communion in Wednesday night super infrequently because I try to always say that communion is something a part of the worship service that is a part of the community of God's people in the church, and that's only for Sunday morning. So we'll do it, but it might be like 3 times a year we'll have communion in youth group because I want to make sure they understand this is a sacred event that happens with the body of believers of all ages and generations and stuff like that. But yeah, like it's an interesting concept, and I would love to see if there's a way to teach students how to give because it would help serve the greater purpose of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Keith, you haven't gotten a word in like the last 5 minutes, so you go. Just talk.
I was hoping you guys were just going to fight. That was. So.
All right, well, then get out of here. Let's go.
Yeah.
No, I was going to share. We've gone through an interesting evolution here with our mission statement as a church in the last 13 years. When I came, our mission statement as a church, it was called a home for believers, and home was an acronym. And yes, you got to go acronym. But it was like the H was to heed the call of Christ, to win the lost near and far. The O was like to open our lives to the calling of God. And I mean, just to give you an idea, like I was on staff, and we had 4 other ministers on staff, and I think only like 2 of us could quote the mission statement of the church as staff members.
Awesome.
So it wasn't a huge part of the lifeblood of who we are. It didn't really drive who we were, and it was even kind of like difficult to understand and to navigate through. So about 5-6 years ago, our elders sat down and said, let's rework our discipleship strategy. Let's see what do we want to be about? How do we want to drive this ship? And through that process, they picked everybody's brains, and we talked for months and months about what we wanted to be about, and we actually landed on, as a church, connect, worship, grow, serve. So they actually looked at the ministry that we were doing. They looked at the mission statements and kind of the overarching direction of our ministry, and they said, like, we think this says it well, that it's who we are as a church, that it makes sense. And so let's adopt that and make that just a part of our overall body's mission statement. So obviously that was kind of flattering for me that they felt they could get behind that. And it also was nice in that I didn't have to change mine. So
Yeah.
But so it's kind of weird because in one sense, when I first came, our mission statement was not the same as the churches, because the churches was kind of convoluted or a little difficult to understand and really didn't resonate with students because it was so long and nobody could quote it. I mean, it wasn't something that but like Frank said, it was still our ministry model, our mission statement fit within the context of the larger church. Like, it still made sense, but it wasn't the same. And now the church has said, hey, let's simplify this, let's make it work. And now we're all kind of running the same direction. So it's an interesting evolution for me that I see both sides of it because I've been on both sides of it. So
yeah. All right. Last question, and just real quick with it, and then we're gonna keep this short and end it. So we just did sort of a rebrand of our youth ministry. All we really did was we added a logo. There was no icon. It was just the word 180. And
but it's a good logo. I mean, don't undersell yourself. I like it.
Except for when I showed the students, they were all like, "That's dumb."
Whatever. No.
But here's my philosophy with logos.
I don't even like the name 180. Like, I think that's the lamest name for youth groups. But you made that logo like super awesome, and I want I would rebrand my youth group 180 just to have that logo because it's a dope logo. Even though kids don't understand good branding, whatever.
Whatever.
You what?
I'd make out with that logo for sure.
All right. Well, my philosophy with like logos is your students need to be able to redraw it. That, like, if it's gonna be your brand, like, it has to be simple enough that and something desirable enough that like your students are gonna draw it all over their binders, put it on their lockers, like yada yada yada. The inverse of that should a church mission statement be that way? Because I think sometimes we so force our mission or purpose or vision into a statement to be cute and memorable that we either put on stuff that we're not really going to do, or we leave off stuff that is important to us. So, what are you guys' thoughts on should it be memorizable like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we have made that such a part of the lifeblood of our ministry, that connect, worship, grow, serve, connect, worship, grow, serve, that our students even know, like, okay, Sunday school is our grow event, Wednesday nights is our worships, life groups is our connect event. Like, they know that so well. My leaders can quote it, but if you were to ask me, I mean, we can expand that to give you a larger, flowery definition of what that really means. But yeah. I think for kind of that branding idea, that thing they're going to recreate, that thing they're going to talk about, I think to make that memorable enough that, yeah, you can get the key components without getting down into the nitty-gritty. And they don't need to know all the back end and the details and all the philosophies and drawings and everything you've done in the back end to get there. But I do think the final product needs to be at least somewhat memorable.
Yeah, I agree with Keith. Like, that's why I don't like. I think, Ben, yours was like kind of short. Your slogan or your vision statement, which I think is good. I think short vision statements that get to the point. If you can get to the point in like 180 characters, you have the greatest vision statement ever, because you can tweet it everywhere. But I don't know. For me, like, I can almost guarantee you, if you were to poll all the kids in my youth group and our leaders, none of them could recite it. Like, none of them could remember what our vision statement is, our mission statement is. It's on our website, and I've printed it in certain places, but I don't think anyone will remember it. But here's what I want. Here's my goal in our ministry: that as we do life in ministry, as we go on our trips, as we do small groups, as we do all these different things, that they're able to reread our purpose statement and say, "Oh yeah, we definitely do this." Like, if that's all that comes from it, I don't care if they don't memorize it. But as long as they can say, well, yeah, I've been in this youth group for 4 years, that's definitely what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, Frank's always talking about the gospel. Frank's always talking about how the gospel overflows to every aspect of our lives. Like, when I went on the missions trip, like, I've seen this. I know this is true. And that's my goal. Like, I think that would be, like, if they memorize it, that would be awesome. But, like, if they don't, as long as they can read back and look at that statement and say, yeah, like, we do this, then I'm totally content. And I think that would be true for the church at large too, if that's what they said, you know?
Yeah. All right, well, it's 3:50. I enjoyed this conversation, and
good.
Reading the text from the rest of the contributors. Yeah, we're going to do this, try and do it every Monday around 3:20, just so it's more of a standout time, gives us time to get our cameras all set up. And my cameras, I mean laptops. But thanks for tuning in to the 10 of you guys who were on here at one point or another. And we will be posting in the Facebook community what you want us to do next week. We have some topics of our own, but if you want us to answer a question, we'd love to see that. So thanks for tuning in. Check out the January bundle. Visit nomoreclipart.com.
Videosforstudentministry.com.
What?
Videosforstudentministry.com. Yeah. Nomoreclipart.com. Youthman.org.
I'm at 450, so I'm from the future. That's what I want to do.
Right.
How is it up there?
It's really cold, is what it is.
In the future?
Yes, it's like negative 11.
It's super cold in the future.
Yeah, I made the awesome mistake of walking out of my house without a jacket today, because I was like, it's not that cold. It's all sunny and stuff. And I got it was like 0 degrees. I was like, dang it. I mean, I felt it before I got in the car, but...
All right.
All right, you guys have a good week.
Yeah, man, have a good one.
See you, dudes.